So, hi everyone. This is Dr. Alana James, and I'm grateful to the people in the room who were able to make it past the time zone issues, and a number of you will be watching by recording. So I hope that you had a chance to register your questions on www.wooclap.com/pre-proposal. And that's where we'll be answering questions in just a little while. So what are these 15-minute boosts? They are one researcher's journey, my journey as a researcher right now doing this work. And someone this summer asked if I could please unpack how it was going as I was doing it. And so that's what these are. All of us do this work a little differently, and we have different thoughts as it goes along. So this is an opportunity to share those things. So if when I'm talking, you think, oh, well, it worked this way for me, go ahead and put that in the chat so everyone can share from everybody else's experience. We're all learning, right? We're all learning together. And apologies ahead of time if this one runs over. Typically they're 15, my idea was 15 minutes of me talking, 15 minutes of me answering questions. This one has a lot in it, so I'll go very fast. The slides are up in the handouts if you need them. And your questions, type in to www.wooclap.com/pre-proposal. It can be all caps or lowercase, but that's where we want to look at for questions at the end. So agenda. First, I'll go quickly through the preliminary work and then kind of how it's changing and developing, because this is a process of thought. So what I experienced and showed you in the first 3 weeks has morphed a little bit. And then I'm going to talk about testing our ideas as we go, between the difference in different kinds of coding and the different thoughts that come up and how you look for disconfirming evidence. And then I'm going to go into, I have some slides on MAXQDA and the analytic tools, just a quick overview of the analytic tools that made sense for me in my lit. Now, that's a caveat that many of you will be using NVivo or other kinds of qualitative software, or you may not be using qualitative software at all. These ideas are still solid ideas in the process, and you just have to change them out a little bit to fit your circumstance. Again, www.wooclap.com/pre-proposal, and I have some resources for you as well. Okay, so starting with the preliminary work, how's it developing or changing? This was the first concept map, so this was the first week, and for my research, the conceptual design is an overlap of 3 bodies of research. PhD completion, which goes back 75, 80 years and just tells a lot of personal stories as well as some looking at it from a bigger picture. Remote or digital distance learning, they can't even agree on what to call it. And it's very recent, and it's what I'm calling the Wild West. And then this kind of in-between space on professional development, which is a term that means all kinds of different things to different people. So in between those, we have different, so grad students who are from PhD completion and professional development, as an example. Then we have lit on grad students doing PhD or outreach. So they overlap, and you're looking for the overlaps. Now, the second week, I talked about significance. And so significance is your work going to be globally interesting, nationally interesting, and globally could also be a large or persistent issue. Nationally, that middle circle could be a national level, or it could also be an innovation in your field. So all educators might like this. Localized could be, this is research that really impacts my city or my state, but also it could mean that there's a gap in the literature. So again, a smaller quantity of significance. And then finally, we have personal practice. Most of us are writing to multiple levels of significance, and those things have to be kept in mind. So, and this is making a difference in how I am coding as I go. So I have to think now about my audience, because I'll be writing an article, actually 3 articles, slightly differently slanted. And in fact, one thing you could do is you could write the same article and slant it for different significances. There's a lot of ways to chop and change what you've got in your research. So in this case, the global audience cares about graduation rates. The national audience really might care about the size of the university, because our one university, research university, is different from a public or state. They also might care about this because it's innovative. Interesting in filling the gaps would be our local level and practitioner content. Practitioners will care about how it gets done. So, and it's quite possible that the tensions between those differences will, at the end, require you to split out what you do to multiple articles. But it's good to have it in the back of your mind, and it's good to refresh and think about it as you go forward. So concept maps and significance maps, something that you have going on all the time that you're doing this work. Those ideas you don't like say, oh, I've got this done, I'm parking it now. You think this is a living, breathing entity that drives my thoughts about how I write out my research. So the lit develops through consistent time and practice. So so it looked at first like a linear process. It looked like I had my concept map and I built out, that's the blue documents. I built out file folders for each of those 10, three bubbles, 3 overlaps, and the boot camps in the middle. So 10 file folders. And I slid all the lit I wanted to look at into those file folders. So that's pretty linear, 1-to-1. And then what I did is I open coded, meaning I read through a lot of documents and I decided codes as I went. And I'm now realizing that my codes sort into different varieties or types. I'm going to use them differently. So I have kind of what I'm calling it the overview. But because I'm writing for publication, I put in a code for keywords and I put in a code for theory, because I was looking at, all right, what are the keywords other people are using and what are the theories other people are using? And it was a good thing I did, because what I realized is that there is no consistency in my literature. I'll come back to why that's important in a minute. So then I realized that as I'm talking about getting the work done, I'm a pragmatist, so most of the time that's the outcome of my arguments, is that this is things you have to consider if you're going to get the work done. Then challenges, benefits, and tools seem to be a batch of codes that made sense together. And now, as it grows and changes, I realize that tools is not quite the right word. It's probably tools and skills, because some of these things that make the work go better are things you as a student need to develop in yourself that will make the work go better. And other things are things that can be done on the outside to help you. So I'm beginning to see that the literature has sort of got 2 things going on there that I hadn't realized, that they were different. So these change as you go. And so again, you have to have the self-reflective brain. You have to keep asking yourself, what do I think about all this? And the first thing I thought about all this was that there are too many keywords here. There are too many theories here. And I'll show you in a second. I thought it was going to be here. So then you're testing and you're searching as you go on. All right, that's what I want to get to. So I want you to be, what I'm conscious of today as I've gotten going into the analysis is what a nonlinear process this is. All right, so just my process. I put everything in files and put them there. And then actually someone in the last week asked, how did I know that was accurate? What if I opened a file and it actually didn't belong in that folder? And that brought up the question of, would I even be conscious of the fact that it didn't belong in that folder as I was going? And I decided probably not, because when I'm reading and coding, I'm in a different head than if I'm looking at how it gets organized. So then at the end, I needed a test for whether and to what extent there was a difference between the evidence in various groups. And I'll show you that when the one that I think will work for that. And then, so challenges, benefits, and tools per the different Venn diagram things. Are there differences between them? Because you're looking at them from a different point of view. There should be. You would logically think there should be, but it's a good question to ask. And then maybe that conceptual map isn't even right. I should look at that. And then, as I said, I understood that skills and tools weren't the same thing, even though I was putting, even though the lit uses them actually for a similar purpose. So there'll be something that I tease out there. And then, as I've mentioned, theories and keywords are very useful because they let you see the overview of the lit you're getting. So things develop. And what do I want to say about that? Set it up and then test it as it goes along. Always look for disconfirming evidence. Always be saying, is this right? Does this make sense? Do I have these things in the right place? Should I because it's better to redo stuff now when you're coding and you're putting it together than it is when you've gone a little further down the road. Because once you get to analysis, everything gets a little longer when you reorganize it. And then the last thing I want to say is when you'll get to a point, I got to a point where I could start developing my arguments. And the first argument I've been alluding to, it's the fact that the literature here is like the Wild West, meaning there is no consistency. And the official academic word would be it's an emergent field. So I coded the keywords in the theoretical stance, and I got big lists of all the possibilities. Only very small clusters of researchers are studying the things I'm studying from the same angle. So what you really have is a pot of all the work that's going on in online education and a million people all over the world looking at that from a slightly different pie. And that's going to make it really hard to come up with, the meta-analysis will be a while in the future because it's just a very complicated, so we have to say that when we start the lit, we have to say, this is very emergent, there isn't consistency, and then having the codes gives me evidence. So I can say 25 theories, 125 different keywords across this many documents. And then it becomes clear that, in fact, there is no consistency. So useful to use your codes to actually come up with frequencies or specific data that then back up your arguments. You can begin to do that. So at the end of the day, qualitative research is all about how well you can sort. And in my opinion, so I'm now got them all coded or almost all coded, and I'm questioning what analytic tools will MAXQDA give me to make this easier. And here's what I came up with. All right, so this is a MAXQDA screen. Rather than doing it live, I thought it was probably faster to do it this way. So they have along the top variables, and I went to a list of code variables because, in fact, the word variable, what it is, what small finite thing you're going to study, and that's what I put together in my codes. And then this particular one tests the frequency of codes per the bigger chunks of file folders. So I can see that I have most about completion, and I have least about professional development and completion. So the first question is, do I have enough lit? And the answer is probably need to go back and find more things on professional development, which is the big circle, because I can be okay if the little overlap doesn't have much in it, but the big circles need to be fleshed out in the Venn diagram. And so I'm going to have to go outside of education to find that lit. I'm going to go to the industry world and look for lit on professional development, I think. So that's the first outcome of analysis. Did I have enough? No. Second, again, still in variables. So I haven't even gotten to analysis yet. Still in variables, there's something called a data editor, and it breaks out the count per code per parent code. So parent code challenges, and then a lot of different kinds of challenges, and it breaks out those challenges. So there was one example of low levels of satisfaction, one example. So I know intuitively that these are important challenges. To the extent I absolutely need to mention them, I probably should go look to see if I can find at least a couple of these. Now, remember, how much you need to flesh out depends upon the body of work you're doing. So if you're doing a dissertation, it becomes more critical that you have more than ones in a lot of these cases. If you're writing journal articles, you only get a page to write all the lit you want to talk about anyway. So a citation here and there probably would be okay. And I'm of the mind that you are not, in today's world, none of us are ever again going to be able to say, oh, I know all the lit. Unless you're doing a meta-analysis of your literature and you are systematically saying, I have looked at all the lit in this area about this, and I have coded all of that, you cannot make a case for more than you've done a good job, you've put the lit together, you have some ideas that are worthy of others to look at. And that's the case for most journal articles. In fact, probably all journal articles that aren't talking about a lit review. Now, and that's why I said it was a fallacy. So I could say the relative importance of these things, and I can talk about them in a pretty authoritarian tone of voice, but I have to realize there's a fallacy because it's not exhaustive. And I have to mention that fallacy as I'm writing. All right, next thing is code activation. All right, so when you're in any of the software platforms, then you're going to need to chop and change. You're going to need to say, I want to look at just my challenges, and what does that look like? I want to look at this. So if I take all the coded segments from challenges, benefits, and tools, which are the three areas I think I'm going to discuss the most, I get 435 coded segments. That would be daunting to read through and analyze 433 codes. So I can go through and I can just activate challenges, or I can just activate benefits. I can even go in to just activate a certain code. And it's in the activation that you get to, because the alternative is you you can export all this stuff. You can work in Excel if you're more comfortable with Excel, but I'm trying to get to where I can use this tool very efficiently. And activations is one of the secrets. So this was my favorite. And if any of you have watched previous to this, and I recommend it, it's still a very good way of sorting your lit. In the PD education site, there, if you type in the word spreadsheets, you'll get to a list that includes how to use spreadsheets for lit review. And there's some model spreadsheets, and it shows how it's done. And this is the equivalent of that. So I can, the code system, my challenges, benefits, and tools across all of the codes, and I can click on one of them, and it gives me all the coded segments in that box. And then when I write a summary, it turns the box green. So I know that I've done that box, and then I can start to see my summary. So this is the way I think. I put everything in a column, and then I read the column. And when I read the column several times, the big pictures pop into my head, and I put my understanding of that in the summary. And then later on, I can just pull up the summaries, and that's how you write. The summaries are the paragraphs, and the coded segments are going to give you who said what or who to reference when you're talking about what part of that summary. And then finally, there's some beautiful things here that you can do with pictures. So now I'm in the visual tools at the top, and I've started a new, when I pull down, you have the start one that I've outlined in the second row, and then you have new code module. There's a little pull down arrow there, and when you pull it down, you have all these different kinds of pictures that it automatically makes for you. This one is the hierarchical code subcodes model. So it shows that under challenges, those were the subcodes that went under them, and it shows what the frequencies were under those subcodes. Over to the left, you'll see that the code size shows its relative strength in the hierarchy, and that there's an aggregate frequency attached. So you have some leeways. It lets you, I'm a visual person, it lets me see how these things go. And then it also moves into a point where you can do this creative coding. Now, before you mess with this one, you want to save what you're working on, and if you're going to play around with your data, when it comes to this kind of analysis, save as and do a new complete project that is the playing around part. And here's the reason. When I creatively coded tools and benefits and challenges, and then I saw all the codes, it made sense to me that this one over here should naturally be related to that one there, and this one here should go there. They had some relationships that I know about just intuitively and because I do this work, but in order to save that here, it gave me the option of, do you want us to rearrange the codes as per your diagram? And I froze because I wasn't sure I was ready to go there yet. If I was going to go there, I would save it, I would play with it, I would do that, and then I would see what that did to my codes. And then I'd go back through my analysis and I'd say, do I like this or not? If I don't like it, I get rid of the whole project. If I do like it, then it becomes the next. Iterative models are very useful, and saving them as keeps your stuff safe. Okay, so yeah, I ran over, not more than 15 minutes. I knew I was going to. This is self-directed learn. So just wanted to show you a couple places on the PD education site that would flesh out. This conversation is based on a deep understanding of these topics. So if you don't have as deep an understanding, go to PD Education. First one in is the self-directed learning modules. There's 2 modules that'll help with this. One is the one on Lit Review, and the other one is results and findings. And there's a lot of stuff there that you can go through and sort out, and will take you the next step, and understanding some of the back thoughts that I'm playing off of. Also, just to remind you that the app has all of the webinars, and almost everything here is in a webinar as well. So if you like to pick up this stuff while you're walking your dog or doing the dishes, that's available for you on the app.